Chapter 7 O'Donnell's Bend. The next morning Patsy heard the cat meowing at the houseboat window. Daddy let him in, and he came over to Patsy's bed and got in with her. Patsy dozed off again. Then the oven door in the kitchen banged. Daddy must be taking biscuits out of the oven. Tom the cat heard it too and ran out to eat breakfast with Daddy. He lifted his paw and said, "Meow." Daddy said, "I can't hear you." Tom scratched his claws on Daddy's pants leg, and Daddy fed him pieces of bacon. Patsy dressed and went out. She was the first one of the children up. "How you like it here, honey?" asked Daddy. He got up to go to the fish barge. "Pretty nice, eh? You like it?" "I don't know yet," said Patsy sleepily. She picked up a biscuit and a piece of bacon and followed him out on the porch. She took a look around and soon came in again. "Where's our house?" she asked Mama. "There's none here." "We don't need a house," said Mama. "We've got the biggest houseboat on the river." "There's no town here," said Patsy. "There's a country store," said Mama, "and lots of cotton farmers livin' up the river road. The school bus goes along here and picks up all the kids and takes them into Luxora to school. Luxora's a right nice little town about 8 miles away." Patsy had not thought about school for a long time. Now she remembered Miss Norton in River City. She thought of her birthday party when she had turned 9. Mama had sent a note to Miss Norton, and she said yes, she could have one. Mama took a nice cake, boxes of ice cream, muffins, and trinkets from the dime store. The children in Patsy's class played games and had a good time. Patsy got many presents, all that seemed a long time ago. "When does school start?" she asked suddenly. "The last week of August, probably," said Mama. "Well, we can't stay here very long then," said Patsy. "We'll just have to turn around and start right back up that old river again." "We are not going back to Illinois," said Mama quietly. "Why not?" asked Patsy. "It's too hard to push a big houseboat upriver," said Mama. "But we got to go back," cried Patsy. "We live there. We've got our house there. I go to school there, and I like my teacher." Mama decided she might as well let Patsy know. "We sold the house," she said. "We had to sell it to pay Daddy's debts." Patsy's heart sank. "It's not ours anymore." "No," said Mama cheerfully, "so we can't go back. That shelling up there was too hard on Daddy's back. He wanted a change." "How will he make money?" asked Patsy. "Selling fish," said Mama. "Selling fish," said Patsy. "Smelly old things." "There ought to be good sale for fish in a place like this," said Mama. "All the cotton pickers will come and buy." Dan and Bunny were outside waiting and splashing in the water at the river's edge. Millie was helping Daddy get his fishing gear out. Patsy came out on the porch and slumped down on the leather couch. Below a bank of cottonwoods and willows, the houseboat was securely tied. The chute at O'Donnell's Bend was as wide as a small river. Island number 27, also called Forkadeer Island, on the other side was densely wooded. Birds were singing in the trees. The sun came out bright and hot. "Well, here we are, honey," Daddy called to Patsy from the fish barge. "How you like this place? Want to stay here a while, like little river rat?" To be called a river rat always gave Patsy a little stab of pain, but when Daddy said it lovingly, it was different. He was not teasing her or calling her names. He was loving her and using her pet name, but this time she sulked and did not answer. "What's the matter, honey? Cat got your tongue." Still Patsy did not answer. "I thought you was a river pal of mine," said Daddy. "Gonna help me set my trot lines this evening." "No, I'm not," cried Patsy. She got up and flounced indoors, banging the screen door behind her. Daddy looked after her, scratching his head. "Now what's eaten her, I wonder?" He came in and passed by her where she lay on her bed, with her face turned to the wall. He changed his clothes and went up the river bank to catch a ride to town. He wanted to get his Arkansas fishing license the first thing. Mama called from the kitchen, "Go take care of your chicken, Patsy. Move the coop up on the bank. If there are any eggs, bring them in." Patsy got up. "But if we're not staying here," she began. "We are staying here," said Mama, "for a while anyway, to see if the fishin's any good. So make up your mind to that." Reluctantly, Patsy went out and called Dan. They took the chicken coop up on the bank and set it on an old sawed-off stump. Patsy opened the door and turned the hens out. "They all run off in the woods, and you'll never see them again," somebody said. Patsy looked around and saw a strange girl staring at her. She was about 10, tall and thin and pale, and she had a mass of tangled blonde hair. Patsy stared back and did not speak. She sent Dan to get a hammer and some nails. When he returned, she nailed 2 nest boxes on a tree near the coop. She pulled long grass and filled the nests. "They'll lay all over the woods," said the strange girl. "They'll never go in them boxes." "What do you know about it?" asked Patsy. "You'll never see your chickens again," insisted the girl. "People will steal 'em. Snakes and weasels and possums will eat 'em. Look," said Patsy, pointing to the hens. "Are they running off?" The 4 hens stood watching, as if ready to lay their eggs. "They been moved around so much, that's all they know. Their nest," said Patsy. "Want to know what their names are?" The girl's mouth opened in astonishment. "They got names." "This one's Shoefly, and that one is Miss Cackle," said Patsy. "And there's Jenny Brown, and here's Fluffy Tail." The girl could not think of a thing to say. 2 of the hens jumped into the nests. "The varmints will get all their eggs," said the girl. Patsy did not argue. She told Dan to go get a rope. She acted as if the strange girl were not there at all. Dan shinnied up the tree and tied the 2 ends of the rope to a horizontal branch. It made a nice rope swing. Patsy sat in it and swung back and forth. Then she picked up a chicken, tucked its head under its wing, and perched it on the rope swing. "I got to go pack Mama some wood in," she told the chicken. "You stay right here till I get back. Come on, Dan, let's get lots of wood. Mama wants to do a big washin'. They hurried away and began to pick up dead branches of trees. Dan brought a hatchet and they chopped them. They made a pile halfway up the river bank. All this time the strange girl stood watching them. "I wish she'd go away," Patsy said to Dan. "I don't like her," said Dan. "Do you?" "No," said Patsy. "She thinks she knows it all." They went over to the rope swing. The hen was still perched on the rope, its head still under its wing, the way she had left it. Patsy lifted the hen and put it in one of the nests. "Jeepers," exclaimed the girl. "How do you do that?" Patsy tossed her head. "It's all in knowin' how." She and Dan went back to the houseboat. After a while the girl went away, but when Mama sent the children to the store to buy some groceries, they saw her again in the road. This time there were other children with her, an older boy in ragged overalls and 2 little girls with very dirty faces. They stared at the newcomers. Patsy turned to Dan. "I don't like this place, do you?" she asked. "No," said Dan. "I just hate it. I hope we'll go down river tomorrow." When they came out of the store with their bags of groceries, Patsy dropped one. The strange girl ran and picked it up. It had bananas in it. "I'll tote it for you," the girl said in an eager voice. She followed them down the river bank, leaving her brother and little sisters behind. She stopped at the stage plank, uncertain what to do. Patsy and Dan walked round the guard to put their groceries in the kitchen. Then they came back. The girl handed Patsy the bag of bananas. "My name's Joella Harris," she said, trying to be friendly. "What's yours?" "Patsy Foster," said Patsy, "and he's Dan Foster." "You live here?" asked the girl. "Sure, why not?" said Patsy, on the defensive. She turned quickly and went inside. Mama, who had been listening by the door, said, "Give that girl a banana." "Oh, Mama, not a banana," cried Patsy. "I don't even know her." "She helped you bring the groceries, didn't she?" said Mama. "Yes, but—" "Give her a banana," said Mama sternly. Patsy went out and crossed the stage plank, where the girl was waiting. Grudgingly, she held out a banana, a precious banana that she herself liked so much. "Here," she said. The girl turned away and refused to take it. "All right then," snapped Patsy. "If you don't want it, I'll—" Quickly, she stripped the banana and began to gobble it down in large bites. "I can have all the bananas I want," said the girl. "I don't want any of yours." "Okay then," said Patsy, but Joella did not go away. She still stood there. "Where you folks goin', anyhow?" she asked, filled with curiosity. "Down the river, just any place we feel like," said Patsy. "We don't have to stay in one place the way you do. Our house floats. It doesn't set on posts in the ground like the houses round here. It looks almost like a house," said Joella. Patsy frowned. "I wish it was a house," she said. "You don't like livin' in a houseboat?" asked Joella. "Oh, sure," said Patsy. "Course I like it. I got to." "But you'd rather live in a real house," said Joella. "No, sir," cried Patsy fiercely. "Most people are not half as lucky as we are. They can't take their houses with them when they go places. We are regular snails. We take our house right along wherever we go." She looked at the strange girl and began to brag a little. "You got to stay in one place all the time. I feel sorry for you. You can't keep going the way we do. Why, we can even go all the ways to New Orleans if we want to." "Where's that?" asked Joella. "Why, don't you know?" asked Patsy. "Don't you study geography? I can find it on our river maps. It's in Louisiana, just above where the Mississippi flows into the Gulf of Mexico." "Oh," said Joella, "you going there?" "No," said Patsy. "We are staying here, I think." "I'm glad," said Joella softly. After Miss Foster put the houseboat in order, she decided to hunt up her old friend, Edie Barker, the lamplighter's wife. Millie went along as far as the store, found some girls her own age there, and went off with them to one of their houses. Miss Foster asked the man at the store where to find the Barkers. He pointed up the dirt road toward Ashport Ferry Landing. "They got a houseboat settin' right next to a cotton field," the man said. "You can't miss it." Miss Foster and Patsy started up the road, with Dan and Bunny coming behind. A car caught up with them, passing in a whirl of dust to go to the ferry. The cotton beside the road was in bloom now. Patsy picked a blossom and put it in her hair. Passing several tumble-down farm buildings, they soon saw a houseboat on the left ahead. It was perched high on the bank, resting on heavy posts. Patsy did not need to be told why the houses in Illinois and Kentucky and Arkansas along the Ohio and Mississippi rivers always stood on post. That was because of high water every year. There stood Miss Barker on the little back porch with a broom in her hand. "Well, if it's not Liz Foster," she cried. "Seth told me he seen you folks comin' down river and said you'd hunt us up." The next minute they were all inside, and the two women were in each other's arms, and the children were trying to remember Aunt Edie. The Barkers' houseboat was much smaller than the Fosters'. It had 3 rooms, kitchen, bedroom, and living room. It was tiny and cozy and held a lot of furniture, including a TV set and a sewing machine. Aunt Edie was a plump, good-natured woman of 50 with hair already turning gray. "We are always stoppin' along the river huntin' folks up," said Miss Foster. "Usually we find 'em, but sometimes it's a hard job. We were afraid you folks had gone off again by this time." "Law me," explained Miss Barker. "We been all over the map the last few years. We used to be at Ashport and got sick of it, so we went to Fort Pillow. Then we came back and lived in a tent at the head of this chute. You found us there, remember? Then we went to Louisiana for about a year. That state's plumb full of houseboats, but it's so wet it gives you rheumatism." "Seth is like Abe," said Miss Foster. "He's as crazy as Abe is, been all over and come back again like us." "Seems like Seth is never satisfied," said Miss Barker. "In the woods it was too lonesome. Seth likes to talk, and there was no one but me. Then he tried Louisiana, 'cause he was born and raised there." "How long you been here?" asked Miss Foster. "About 8 months," said Miss Barker. "We just got this houseboat last winter. Seth paid $500 for it. It's nice and cozy," said Miss Foster, "for just you two. Wouldn't be big enough for a family of kids like mine." Miss Barker asked the children how old they were and passed around cookies. Then they went out to play, and the two women talked alone. "How you making out, really, Edie?" "Pretty good," said Miss Barker. "Seth gets $186 a month as a lamplighter, but he has to furnish his own boats and motors and his own gas and oil. That doesn't leave too much for us, so I figured if we stayed here in Arkansas this fall, I could help out by picking cotton in my spare time. One woman told me she makes $60 a month at it. Of course, I'm getting old and can't pick very fast, but—" "I just won't pick that stuff," said Miss Foster. "I tried it for 2 weeks once, but didn't like it." "Well, I thought I'd do it," said Miss Barker. "They're always needin' pickers, and you can go at your own speed. Why don't you come with me? I'll introduce you to Mr. George, the boss man." Miss Foster laughed. "If I'd go to picking cotton, we'd be broke in 2 days' time. No, I'll let Big Abe catch fish and sell 'em, and I'll take in the money." "Is he aimin' to fish?" asked Miss Barker. "Here at O'Donnell Bend." "Yes," said Miss Foster. "We got a good place down under the river bank, below the store there. Abel put a sign out. Andy Dillard won't like that," said Miss Barker. "Who's Andy Dillard?" Patsy came in just in time to hear what Miss Barker said. "Andy's got a fish house down below us here at the ferry landin'. He sells to folks goin' back and forth to Tennessee on the ferry, and to the cotton pickers too." "Is there a store down there?" asked Miss Foster. "It used to be a store, and we ran it for a while," said Miss Barker. "I did it. Seth didn't help much. I sold soft drinks, peanuts, chewing gum, and candy, maybe a few cakes and pies, but no beer. We are Christians and don't believe in it. I did that for a while, but didn't make out very well, so I quit. "So it's a fish house now?" asked Miss Foster. "Yes," said Miss Barker, "and Andy Dillard acts like he owns the whole Mississippi River. Don't say I didn't warn you." Miss Foster called the smaller children, and they came running. "Look, Mama," cried Patsy, pointing down the river bank. "Aunt Edie's got a whole yard full of chickens, and a garden, and a line for clothes down there, and look at her pretty flowers. The window boxes on the houseboat were filled with red geraniums. Aren't they pretty?" "They sure are," said Miss Foster. "I never was one to mess with flowers myself." "They're no work," said Aunt Edie. "You just stick 'em in the ground and they grow." "Not for me, they don't," said Miss Foster. "They fold up and die." A cat came up and rubbed against Miss Barker's leg. "Go away, Ten Spot," she said. "What's the cat's name?" asked Patsy. "Ten Spot," Miss Barker laughed. "That's our $10 cat." Miss Foster and the children stared. The cat did not have long hair, and it was not a Siamese. In fact, it looked very common and ordinary. Its color was a mixture of yellow, white, gray, and black. "You don't mean to tell me you was a big enough fool to pay $10 for that?" "That skinny old alley cat," exclaimed Miss Foster. "It looks like something somebody threw out in the dark." Miss Barker laughed. "It's a $10 cat all right," she said, "but we didn't buy it. A man borrowed $10 from Seth and left this cat, so he calls it his $10 cat. 10 Spot for short." "But if it's a nice cat," said Patsy, "it'd be worth $10, wouldn't it?" The woman laughed. "That's the kind you can't give away," said Miss Foster. "I've tried a dozen times," said Miss Barker, "but it always comes back. It seems to feel at home here." The children said goodbye to Aunt Edie, and Miss Foster invited her to come for a visit. They started off, but Aunt Edie called them back. "How long you folks going to be here?" she asked. "Dunno," said Miss Foster, "until we get a notion to move on. I reckon it's a good place to lay and handy for the kids to go to school." "Be sure to stay through cotton pickin'," urged Aunt Edie. She broke off some geranium slips and handed them to Patsy. "Plant them in some dirt in tin cans and they'll grow," she said. "They will?" asked Patsy, delighted. As they walked back along the dusty road, Patsy said to Mama, "Aunt Edie's houseboat is almost a house, isn't it?" "No more than ours," said Mama. "I mean, it seems like a house 'cause it's up on land," said Patsy. "The water's way down at the bottom of the river bank, not up under the hole." "Oh, yes," said Mama. As they passed the store, Patsy saw the girl Joella and her brother and little sisters sitting on the steps. The store was big and barn-like, sitting on high posts, so there were 5 steps up to the long entrance porch across the front. The girl waved to Patsy, but she did not wave back. She turned to Mama. "That girl's always hangin' around the store," she said. "She must have a lot of money to spend." "Maybe so," said Mama. "We'll find out soon enough." The girl, Joella, and her brother and sisters followed Mama and the children down the river bank. As soon as Mama and Bunny went inside, Patsy put her slips down and she and Dan picked up stones and threw them. They chased the strange children up to the road. They called them names. "I hope Mama didn't see us throw stones," said Patsy. "She made me give that girl a banana, only she didn't take it." "They just better not come down our river bank again," said Dan. Back at the houseboat, Daddy had his trot lines baited and was about to start off in the john boat. Patsy went to the kitchen to look for tin cans to plant her geranium slips. Abe, said Mama on the porch. Edie says there's a man down at Ashport Ferry Landing who has a fish house there and sells fish. That's so, said Daddy. What's his name? Andy Dillard, said Mama. Edie says he won't like it if you try to sell fish here. What can he do about it? Asked Daddy. Run you out, said Mama. Edie felt she had to warn you. Run me out, Daddy laughed. Just let him try it. He turned to Patsy. Want to go with me, honey, to set my lines? Yes, said Patsy, jumping in the boat. On the way out toward the mouth of the chute, they passed the ferry landing and saw the small ferry boat over on the Tennessee side. Patsy pointed to the Arkansas bank, where a small frame building stood. It had a sign on it, "Fish for sale." There it is, she said. That's where Andy Dillard sells fish. Daddy saw the sign and laughed. So Patsy laughed too. There's plenty of fish in this old river for everybody, said Daddy. But when they got back to the houseboat, a strange man stood on deck. Mama was there too, talking to him. The man turned and waited for Daddy to get out of the boat. He was a large fat man with a red face and a tight-fitting cap. His ears stuck out at both sides, and he did not look friendly. Patsy began to tremble. What did he want? How come he was standing on the porch of their houseboat with both his hands on his hips, as if he owned it? As soon as he opened his mouth, Patsy knew that this was Andy Dillard, and that Daddy was in for trouble. You can't tie up on this bank, mister, said Andy Dillard in a loud, blustery tone. Who says I can't? Daddy's voice was soft, and he had a half smile on his lips. I say you can't, said the man. My name is Andy Dillard. You can take your measly, flea-bitten, ramshackle outfit away from this chute and go right back where you came from. Daddy began to go about his business on the fish barge as if he did not hear. After a while he said, You own this river bank, do you? The man ignored his question. I'm giving you fair warning, mister, he said. If you don't get out, I'll have the law on you. The law won't do a thing to me, said Abe Foster. The Mississippi River is federal government property, and I've got an Arkansas fishing license. Want to see it? He started to take it out of his pocket. No, said Andy Dillard. He spoke more quietly now. I'm a friend of George Milburn. He owns this whole big cotton plantation, and that's his plantation store. He said he didn't want any riffraff tied up to the riverbank along here. The federal government's on my side, said Abe Foster with a smile. I can tie up for 65 feet from the water's edge, and nobody can put me off. If I tie a line up there and tear the bark off a tree, they can make me pay for it. I can drive a stake and tie up to it or to a tree for storm delay or accident, and nobody can put me off. I can cut any wood that's not green. The federal government doesn't care. You'd better learn a little more about the law. The man began to shout and bluster again. When he stopped to draw breath, Mama interrupted and said, Supper's ready. Won't you set down and eat a bite with us, Mr. Dillard? No, thanky, ma'am, the man said, stalking off angrily across the stage plank. He turned and glared at Abe Foster. Remember, I gave you fair warning. Then he was gone. When Daddy came in, he said, Some things make me so mad I could eat that fish barge. But he did not mention Andy Dillard's name. Patsy could not eat her supper that night. She leaned against Daddy's shoulder and said, Is he going to run us off, Daddy? Of course not, said Daddy. How could he, said Mama. I'll tell you what, said Patsy. Let's buy a house. Then he can't run us off the bank. Let's buy a house up in town by the school. That's a good idea, said Mama, but Daddy's got no money. Daddy put his arm around Patsy and told her not to worry. Dan told about the Parkers' $10 cat, and they all laughed. Chapter 8. A Visit to the Store. Nothing happened for a week. Then on Saturday, Millie and Mama and Bunny went to town. They caught a ride at the corner by the store. That left Patsy and Dan alone at the houseboat. Daddy was busy with his nets and fishing gear. "Gee, I wish I had a bike," said Patsy. "I'd take you on the back and ride up the river road all the way to Tomato." "Tomato? That's a funny name for a town," said Dan. "Mama said they had a store there once," said Patsy, "and they sold everything but one tomato. So they named the town after it." "I don't believe that," said Dan. "Let's go to the store here," said Patsy. "And get candy," said Dan. "We haven't any money," said Patsy. "Let's ask Daddy," said Dan. "Oh, he never has any," said Patsy. "He gives it all to Mama, and she took her purse with her." "Well, let's go anyhow," said Dan. "I've got an idea," said Patsy. "I'll take my eggs and sell 'em to the storeman, and then we'll have money to spend." She hurried to the kitchen and put half a dozen eggs her hens had laid into a paper sack. "You takin' all of them?" asked Dan. "What'll we eat for breakfast?" "Oh, the hens will lay some more," said Patsy. "I'll feed 'em good." The children started up the river bank with the dog Blackie beside them. "I hope those Harris kids won't be around," said Patsy. "We just won't give them a single bite of our candy." "We'll chase 'em if we see 'em," said Dan, looking forward to a real fight. But when they got up to the road, they forgot about the Harris kids. "Look," said Dan, "Daddy's sign is gone." "Where was it?" asked Patsy. "On the tree right here," said Dan. "I watched Daddy paint it, and I came with him when he nailed it up." "Are you sure it was on this tree?" asked Patsy. "Yes, here's one of the nails sticking in," said Dan. "Where's it gone to, the fish sign?" Patsy's heart was beating so fast she could hardly talk. "Do you suppose Andy Dillard came and took it down?" "I don't know," said Dan. "It was there last night and now it's gone. Let's go tell Daddy." "What's that over there?" asked Patsy, pointing to some bushes. Dan went to look. "Here it is," he said. "It's chopped to pieces." "Oh no," cried Patsy. Dan picked up the pieces, and when they fitted them together, it said "Fish Dock." They took them down to show Daddy. Daddy said, "Put them down, I'll fix the sign and put it up again. Now you go and play." Dan and Patsy went up the river bank again. Patsy still carried her eggs. "I wish we had somebody to play with," said Patsy. "Somebody as nice as Jenny Cobb and the Kramer girls." "I wonder where those Harris kids live," said Dan. "Maybe they would play with us." "No, not after we threw stones at them," said Patsy. "Maybe we could be nice to them," said Dan. "If they're the only kids around here, we got to have somebody to play with." "Well," said Patsy, "I s'pose they'd be better than nobody." When they came to the road, there were the Harris kids again, as big as life. They always seemed to be hanging around the store. Why weren't they ever at home? Where did they live anyhow? They all had lollipops in their mouths and were sucking hard. They didn't even say hello. Blackie yipped at them the way he did at strangers. "They've got more money than we've got," Dan whispered to Patsy. "They can buy lollipops. I wish I had one." "Lollipops is my favorite candy," said Patsy. "Come on, we won't look at them." She and Dan hurried up the steps and went into the store. Blackie went in too. The children had been in the store only once before, so now they took time to look around. It was nicer than any of the stores along the Mississippi River. It smelled good, a sort of cheesy, crackery, onion harness kerosene smell. It was more crowded than a dime store in a river town. The children looked in the candy case and picked out the lollipops they wanted. Then they went to the storekeeper at the back counter. A short, fat man was leaning on the counter talking. Patsy asked the storekeeper, "You want to buy some eggs, nice and fresh?" The man looked in her sack. "Pretty small," he said. "Them your hens out there runnin' all over the river bank. They don't go far," said Patsy. "They always come home to roost." The short, fat man peeked into the egg sack, too. He winked at the storekeeper and said, mighty small, mighty small. They look more like hoot owl eggs to me. Reckon them hens got mixed up with some hoot owls." The two men roared with laughter. It made Patsy very angry. "Hoot owl nothing," she cried, closing her sack and starting away. "Hey, come back if you want to sell 'em," called the storekeeper. "If you make fun of my eggs, I won't sell 'em to you," said Patsy with dignity. "Come on, Dan." "Ah, Patsy," coaxed Dan, "I want some candy." But Patsy was out on the store porch by that time, right there, leaning against the railing. All four of the Harris kids were standing, still sucking on their lollipops. It made Patsy jealous to see them. Suddenly, the big girl, Joella, called out, "We can have all the candy we want." "Huh," said Patsy, "who cares?" "All we need to do is go right in and take it," said Joella. "That's stealing," cried Patsy. "I'll tell the storekeeper on you. He'd put you in jail." All four children burst out laughing. They laughed and made Patsy and Dan feel very uncomfortable. They laughed so loud that Blackie started barking. "You don't even know who the storekeeper is," cried Joella. "Well, who is he?" demanded Patsy. "He's our father," cried all the Harris kids together. "Your father?" cried Patsy weakly. "This is our father's store," said Joella. "He runs it for Mr. George, the bossman. He lets us have all the candy we want, and bananas too, when he gets 'em. That's why I didn't want one of yours." "Where do you live?" asked Patsy in a chastened voice. Joella pointed to the rear of the store, where several rooms were added on. "Right here," she said, "right in the back of the store." Patsy and Dan looked at each other and felt very foolish. This made everything different. They wished now they had never thrown stones. Now they knew why the Harris kids were always hanging around the store. Patsy felt awkward. She did not know what to do next, but Joella did. "Come on inside," said Joella, so they went back in the store. When they came out, Dan and Patsy were each sucking a lollipop, and Patsy had a quarter in her pocket, which Joella's father had given her for the eggs. He even told her he knew they were real hen eggs, so Patsy felt better. The lollipops made all the difference. The Harris kids were nice after all. Patsy and Dan would never throw stones at them again. Now they had somebody to play with. When they started down the river bank, they saw that Daddy's fish sign was back up in its place on the tree. They wondered how long it would stay there. Dan showed the sign to Blackie. "You be a good watchdog," he said. "If anybody comes to tear that sign down, bite a big hole in the seat of his pants." Blackie wagged his tail agreeably. "Do you think Daddy will have a fight with Andy Dillard?" asked Dan. "Oh, I hope not," said Patsy. At first, O'Donnell Bend had seemed a terrible place, with no house, no town, no friends. A terrible place to get away from. But now that Andy Dillard was trying to chase Daddy out of the chute, Patsy's whole feeling had changed. Now, and especially after she found out that the Harris kids were friendly, she wanted desperately to stay. That very day, something else happened to strengthen this feeling. In the afternoon, Joella Harris came down to see her. Joella's hair was combed. Her face was washed, and she had a pretty dress on. With her were two other girls. They said their names were Grace Eva and Brenda Collins, and they lived up the road. "Come on up to our house," said Grace Eva. So Patsy walked with them up the river road toward Tomato. They passed the little abandoned one-room Rural Bend schoolhouse, and the girls talked about what fun it was to ride the bus to school in town. "What grade you in?" asked Joella. "I passed, so fourth," said Patsy. "Oh, then you'll be in my class." Brenda put her arm around Patsy. "Will you sit next to me on the bus?" Warmed by their friendship, Patsy could not tell them that the Fosters might not stay, that they might be forced by Andy Dillard to go off to some unknown place downriver. All she knew was that Mama had said they would not return to Illinois. The girls passed by cotton fields and sharecropper cabins, and soon came to the Collins home. It was small and unpainted, with steps up at front and back. The steps were so high it must mean very high water. "Does the river come way up here?" asked Patsy. "Yes, in early spring," said Grace Eva. "Then we can't go to school. The school bus comes only to the levee, and that's a mile back, so we just stay home." Inside, the house was very plain, with 3 small rooms. There were beds in 2 rooms, and a wood stove, table, and chairs in the kitchen. On the floor were patches of linoleum. The walls were papered with newspapers, and there were no curtains at the windows. A few groceries could be seen in a cupboard. A water bucket and basin sat on a shelf outside the back door. "Where's your mother?" asked Joella. "She went in the truck to Cane Ridge to get water," said Grace Eva. "Want a cold drink?" asked Brenda. "Sure," said Patsy and Joella. "Let's make fruitade," said Grace Eva. "It won't be very cold, 'cause we don't have any ice, but it's good anyhow." The girl took a pan, went down the back steps, and filled it with water from a barrel that stood there. Brenda found an envelope with pink powder in it. She poured the powder into the water and stirred it with a spoon. Grace Eva took a cracker box from the windowsill and passed crackers around. Brenda poured the fruitade into glasses. It was lukewarm and oversweet, but the girls drank it and said it was good. Then they went down the steps and visited under the big oak tree. The girls talked about how soon school would start. They talked about the overcrowded school bus and laughed at the way the boys and girls fought and pummeled each other on the way. They talked about the good hot lunches served at the school. Their eagerness for school to open made Patsy eager too. Maybe this school at Luxora would be all right. Maybe it would be as good as the one at River City, or even better. Then her new friends turned sad. "Wish we didn't have to stay out so much," said Joella, "to pick that mean old cotton." Grace, Eva, and Brenda agreed. "They don't give us cotton vacation anymore at the town school to let kids pick," said Grace, "so we just have to stay out." "What do you pick cotton for?" asked Patsy in surprise. "Oh, we get paid for it. We need the money," said Brenda. "Our daddy's a sharecropper," said Grace Eva, "so all of us have to help him get out his crop. Mama too." "Is it hard work?" asked Patsy. Now the girls looked at her in surprise. "You never picked any cotton?" they asked. "No," said Patsy. "I don't know how." "Why, where you been keeping yourself?" asked Brenda. "I lived on the river all my life," said Patsy, "until Mama put me in school in River City, and we lived in a house there. I did 3 grades in 2 years. Life on the river was something new to the cotton girls." "And you never picked any cotton?" they asked. Cotton was so much a part of their life, they could not imagine not knowing about it. It was a new idea to them that there were people in the world who did not pick cotton. They looked at Patsy in astonishment as she shook her head. "We'll show you how," the girls said, laughing. The Collins girls walked back with Joella and Patsy to the corner by the store. "Want to see my houseboat?" asked Patsy. "Oh, sure, yes, it sure looks nice," they said. They went down the river bank, and Patsy took them inside. The girls thought it was wonderful. They liked the bunk beds, and Patsy promised to invite them to stay overnight and sleep in them sometime. They had never seen bottled gas before, and were surprised when Patsy turned the burner on and it lighted itself from the pilot light. Now, for the first time, Patsy saw her home with new eyes. How homelike it was, with rugs and pretty curtains. Now she knew why Mama insisted on bringing her curtain stretchers all the way from Illinois. Patsy showed the girls the electric washer on the back porch, waiting to be hooked up to an electric wire from the post up on the road. After the girls left, Patsy sat down on the leather couch. Even if it was only a houseboat, it was a very nice home. The Collins girls lived in a house on land. It was true. She felt sad when she thought of it. They had so little, yet they loved it too, and they had to work hard picking cotton to help their father. She felt very sorry for them and wished she could help them. She was glad to have them for friends. Then Mama and Millie and Bunny came back from town, loaded with sacks and bundles. They were all excited and happy because Millie had her mail order package. It had been forwarded twice, but it had caught up with her at last. After the groceries, it took all of Mama's cash money to pay out the COD and the due postage. Millie put on her new dress with ruffled sleeveless blouse and full gathered flowered skirt, and flounced around, feeling very pleased with herself. She put a touch of rouge on her lips and new dime store earrings in her ears. "Don't you ever want to dress up and look nice?" she asked Patsy. Patsy, dressed in t-shirt and shorts, stalked out in disgust. "I should say not," she shouted. "I'm going out with Daddy in his boat to set his lines." Sunday was a very busy day. Uncle Seth and Aunt Edie came in the motorboat and took Mama and the children over to Fork Adair Island to church. Aunt Edie was a Sunday school teacher there and had helped to start the church for the cotton farmers on the island. Daddy stayed at home and took care of fish customers all morning, and after Sunday dinner they still kept on coming. All week long Daddy had fished, setting his trot lines out at night and running them in the morning. While the river was low, he was still able to catch plenty of fish, some quite large. He held them in the fish box until Saturday and Sunday, ready for customers. A tall young Negro man, dressed in Sunday clothes and wearing a straw hat, came down the bank and over the plank. He had a small boy with him, also nicely dressed. He glanced at the river and spoke to Miss Foster, who was sitting on the leather couch. "Water's gonna dry up," he said. "Yes, the river's fixin' to go away and leave us," said Miss Foster. "We had to push the houseboat away from the bank this morning." "Got any catfish?" the man asked. Abe Foster answered from the fish barge. "Might have one or two left," he said. The man and boy stepped over. "People been comin' since daylight. They been sittin' all over the bank, waitin' to buy fish. I'm about sold out. You gotta take any you can get." Big Abe dipped a dip net into the fish box, pulled out several fish, and dumped them on the floor of the barge. His feet were bare, the floor was wet, and the fish flopped about in lively fashion. The man chose two. "Watch out, mister," cried the little boy. "The fish are biting your toes." "I'll quiet them," said Big Abe. He knocked them on their heads with a hammer, then put them on the hanging scales to weigh them. He called the weights so Miss Foster could hear. 4.5 pounds, and 1.5, he said. "They're 35 cents a pound," said Miss Foster. "$1.90 in all. I'll take the money." "You're pretty good at arithmetic," the man said as he paid her. "I have to be," said Miss Foster. "My husband never went to school, can't read, can't figure, but he's just as smart as them that can." Abe Foster spoke up. "I can to figure. I've got my own way of doing it. If it's 35 cents a pound, I figure 1/4 and 1 dime for each pound. It's slow, but I can get it." The man laughed, and he and the boy went on. Another customer, a stout, short man in new striped overalls, came over the plank. He said he owned a restaurant, and he wanted the biggest catfish he could get. Abe Foster went to look for it. Patsy had taken off her Sunday dress and changed to t-shirt and shorts. She placed her 6 geranium plants in the sun on the deck and watered them carefully. They were already starting to grow. As Daddy cleaned the fish, he threw the waste into the river. A dozen turtle heads soon popped up. More turtles crowded up around the houseboat. Patsy brought a dip net and tried to catch them. She was so absorbed in the turtles, she paid no attention to the customers coming and going. She had a contented feeling, knowing that Mama was filling her purse up with cash money again after spending it all the day before. It was very hot in mid-afternoon, although there was a pleasant breeze on the river. Dan appeared with Joella's brother, whose name was Shorty, and several other boys he had found up the road. Back at the kitchen end of the boat, the boys put on their swimming trunks. Then they began to dive or jump off the guard into the river. They came up goose-pimply and shivering, and sat on the guard to get warm. Then Dan, who could not swim, rowed out in the John boat, and the other boys swam out to it and climbed in. They were having a lot of fun, but Patsy paid no attention to them. She kept on dipping for turtles. She wanted to get a whole row of them, so she could play school. Suddenly, without any warning, she heard loud voices. She turned to look, and her heart jumped into her mouth. There was Andy Dillard on the river bank, shaking his fist and shouting at Daddy. Was he coming over, and would there be a fight on Sunday? What would Aunt Edie say? She had talked about fighting in Sunday school this morning and told the children how bad it was, and said there were other ways to settle a quarrel. Daddy had a customer on the fish barge and wasn't even looking at Dillard. Was he coming over the plank to start trouble? Blackie knew something was wrong. He was barking loudly. Patsy ran to Mama's side and clung to her in fright. Mama was standing up now, not saying anything either. Maybe it was better not to say anything. It would be pretty difficult to outshout Andy Dillard. "Let's go inside and shut the door," Patsy whispered to her mother. "Then we can't hear him." But Miss Foster stood her ground. Then Patsy looked and understood why Andy Dillard had stopped on the river bank. The stage plank was down in the mud. He couldn't get over. Mama must have seen him coming and acted quickly. She must have unbolted the pin that held the stage plank and tossed the houseboat end of the plank overboard. At least Andy Dillard could not come any closer, and he could not make the big jump of 8 feet to get over to the fish barge. But there was no way to stop his shouting. Even above Blackie's barking, they could hear his angry words. "You can't sell fish here. You're ruining my trade, Abe Foster. You can't take my customers away from me. I got here first." George says he don't want no riffraff tied up here on the river bank. I'll have the law on you, I'll have the law on you. Andy Dillard kept on saying the same things over and over. Finally he stopped, out of breath. Still, Abe Foster said nothing in reply. He cleaned the fish for his waiting customer and weighed them, but Miss Foster spoke up. "Let's not try to settle this on Sunday, Mr. Dillard," she said politely. "Come back tomorrow and we'll talk it over." Andy Dillard went back up the river bank, blustering. At the top, he ripped Abe Foster's fish dock sign down from the tree and threw it angrily into the bushes. Then he drove off to the ferry landing. Mama watched him go. Then she told Daddy about the stage plank, and he came and put it back in place. Mama did not talk about what had happened. She just said, "Go get the eggs and feed your chickens, Patsy." Patsy started up the river bank with Dan and the dog. The other boys had finished their swim and gone home. "Did you hear what that man said?" asked Dan. "I'm not deaf," said Patsy. "Is he going to run Daddy off the river bank?" asked Dan. "He'd better not try it," said Patsy fiercely.